Welcome to TruthScope. Have you ever wondered what happens when a global power like Russia warns Israel against attacking Iran's nuclear facilities? The stakes are incredibly high, not just for Israel and Iran, but for the stability of the entire Middle East and even the world. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister, Sergei Ryabkov, didn't hold back when he said that such an attack could lead to catastrophic consequences. These consequences wouldn't just affect regional stability, but could also disrupt nuclear security on a global scale. So why is Russia taking this bold stance, and what could it mean for the broader geopolitical landscape? Let's dive into it. Russia's warning to Israel goes far beyond preventing an immediate conflict. It's tied to Russia's long-term strategic interests in the Middle East. Over the years, Russia and Iran have formed a close alliance, one that benefits both nations politically, militarily, and economically. For Russia, this partnership with Iran is vital to keeping its influence in the region intact. If Israel were to strike Iran's nuclear facilities, the resulting chaos could destabilize the region, weakening Russia's foothold in the Middle East. For Moscow, this is a situation it wants to avoid at all costs. Russia is also deeply committed to upholding international law, especially when it comes to nuclear issues. Despite Israel's accusations, Iran's nuclear program is under the strict supervision of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. Russia sees any attack on these facilities as a violation of the global norms that govern the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Allowing such an attack would set a dangerous precedent, one that could unravel other important nuclear agreements worldwide, including those involving Russia. This is why Moscow is adamant in its warning. It's not just about Iran, but also about protecting the international order that helps keep nuclear security stable. Russia's involvement in the Syrian civil war has also brought its military closer to Iran's. Both countries have supported the Assad regime, strengthening their military cooperation. For Russia, this partnership is a key element of its strategy in the Middle East. An attack on Iran could jeopardize this alliance, which would have serious consequences for Russia's broader military and political goals in the region. By warning Israel, Russia is making it clear that it is prepared to take action to protect its interests and ensure regional stability. On the other side of this tense situation is Israel, which has long seen Iran as its biggest threat in the region. For years, Israeli leaders have warned that Iran's nuclear program is getting closer to developing a nuclear weapon, something Israel has vowed to prevent. But attacking Iran's nuclear facilities is a high-risk move, especially now that Russia has firmly positioned itself against such an action. If Israel goes ahead with the attack, it risks clashing with Russia, a global power with significant military assets throughout the Middle East, particularly in Syria. Israel frequently conducts airstrikes in Syria, targeting Iranian and Hezbollah forces. Up until now, Russia has largely ignored these strikes. However, a direct attack on Iran's nuclear facilities would be a different story. Russia could retaliate by increasing military aid to Iran or by restricting Israel's ability to operate freely in Syrian airspace. This would drastically limit Israel's military options and weaken its defense capabilities in the region. Another factor Israel must consider is Iran's growing ability to retaliate. Just recently, in October 2024, Iran fired around 180 missiles at Israel in response to the deaths of Hezbollah and Iranian Revolutionary Guard leaders. Although most of these missiles were intercepted by Israel's defense systems, the sheer number of missiles fired shows that Iran's military power has increased significantly. If Israel were to attack Iran's nuclear sites, the retaliation would likely be even more severe, potentially overwhelming Israel's defenses. The risks don't end there. If Israel strikes Iran, it's highly likely that Iranian-backed militias across the region would join the fight. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iranian forces in Syria, and militias in Iraq could all launch attacks against Israeli targets, forcing Israel to fight on multiple fronts. This would stretch Israel's military resources and increase the chances of significant casualties. Beyond the military risks, Israel could also face serious political consequences. Defying Russia's warning could isolate Israel diplomatically, especially considering Russia's influential role in the ongoing negotiations surrounding Syria and Iran. Losing Russia's cooperation could limit Israel's ability to shape future discussions on these critical issues. Israel finds itself in a precarious situation regarding its relationship with Iran and the perceived threat of a nuclear-armed Iran. While Israel's strongest ally, the United States, would likely offer support, it has shown increasing hesitation to engage deeply in Middle Eastern conflicts. The U.S. is currently prioritizing its focus on the Asia-Pacific region, where tensions with China are escalating. This shift means that although Israel might expect assistance from the U.S., it cannot rely on America to become fully involved in a large-scale war with Iran. Given this complex backdrop, one might wonder, why is Israel so intent on targeting Iran despite the significant risks? At the core of Israel's anxiety is the fear that Iran could develop nuclear weapons. Israeli leaders have repeatedly voiced that a nuclear-armed Iran would pose an existential threat to their nation. This fear is compounded by the haunting memories of the Holocaust, as well as the continuous hostile rhetoric from Iranian leaders who have openly called for the destruction of Israel. For Israel, the mere possibility of Iran obtaining a nuclear bomb is simply intolerable. This fear drives the Israeli government to take aggressive measures to prevent Iran from advancing its nuclear program, as the stakes are incredibly high. However, the concern regarding Iran is not limited solely to its nuclear ambitions. Over the past decade, Iran has significantly expanded its influence throughout the Middle East. It has built alliances and supported proxy groups, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various militias in Iraq and Syria. Through these networks, Iran has bolstered its military presence and extended its reach across the region, which Israel perceives as a direct threat to its security. Even without the nuclear component, Iran's missile capabilities present a significant challenge. For instance, an attack in October 2024 demonstrated Iran's ability to launch a substantial number of precision-guided missiles at Israel. If Iran were to pair its missiles with nuclear warheads, Israel's defense systems would be severely compromised, intensifying the urgency for Israeli leaders to act. Moreover, Israel is critical of the international community's handling of Iran's nuclear program, which it views as weak and ineffective. The 2015 nuclear deal, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, imposed certain restrictions on Iran's nuclear activities. However, Israel has consistently argued that the agreement does not go far enough to prevent Iran from eventually developing nuclear weapons. With the U.S. pulling out of the deal in 2018 and negotiations breaking down, Israel has grown increasingly alarmed, fearing that Iran is progressing closer to achieving its nuclear goals. In light of these pressing concerns, one must consider whether attacking Iran's nuclear facilities is truly the best option for Israel. A military strike could indeed delay Iran's nuclear program, but the potential repercussions of such an action could be dire. It is highly likely that Iran would respond with overwhelming force. With its advanced missile capabilities and a network of regional allies, Iran could launch a series of retaliatory strikes against Israel, potentially overwhelming the nation's defense systems. This response could lead to significant destruction and loss of life, further intensifying the already tense atmosphere in Israel, where citizens have endured years of conflict. Additionally, an attack on Iran could have far-reaching consequences for the stability of the entire Middle East. The region is already a powder keg, with ongoing conflicts in countries like Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. A full-scale military conflict between Israel and Iran could easily drag in other nations, such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey. This could trigger a large-scale regional war with devastating effects on civilians, causing widespread chaos and suffering. Another factor to consider is the environmental impact of such an attack. Nuclear facilities are heavily fortified, but if Israel were to successfully strike these sites, it could lead to the release of radioactive materials into the atmosphere. This would pose significant risks not only to Iranian civilians, but also to the surrounding countries, including Israel. The long-term consequences of such contamination could be catastrophic and would likely create new challenges for both Israel and its neighbors. Perhaps most importantly, an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities might not eliminate the threat at all. Iran has spread its nuclear infrastructure across numerous locations, many of which are concealed deep underground. A military strike might damage some of these sites, but is unlikely to destroy the entire nuclear program. In fact, such an attack could merely delay Iran's progress, while simultaneously reinforcing its resolve to continue its nuclear ambitions in secret. This dynamic could ultimately lead to a more secretive and potentially more dangerous situation for Israel, as Iran becomes more determined to achieve its nuclear objectives despite external pressures. With so many risks involved, it's worth considering if there might be a better way for Israel to address its challenges. One possibility is for Israel to initiate direct discussions with Iran. Although this may appear unlikely due to the history of animosity between the two nations, there have been instances in the past where longtime adversaries have successfully engaged in negotiations. A prime example of this is the Iran nuclear deal, which showcases how diplomacy can yield results, even if the outcomes are not ideal. Additionally, Israel could focus on strengthening its alliances with other nations in the region that also perceive Iran as a threat. The recent Abraham Accords, which established normalized relations between Israel and several Arab countries, offer a framework for enhanced regional cooperation. By collaborating with countries like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, Israel could create a united front that exerts more pressure on Iran to curtail its nuclear activities. This alliance could be beneficial not only for Israel, but also for other nations in the Middle East concerned about Iran's ambitions. Russia's warning to Israel against launching attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities highlights the significant stakes involved in the Middle East. For Israel, the potential risk of Iran developing nuclear weapons is a concern that cannot be ignored. However, the repercussions of a military strike could be catastrophic, escalating tensions in the region. There is a looming threat of a full-scale war, one that could potentially involve major global powers like Russia and the United States. While military action remains a viable option, Israel also has other avenues to explore. Diplomatic efforts, building regional alliances, and establishing international oversight could all contribute to mitigating the risks associated with Iran's nuclear program. Nonetheless, these solutions demand time, patience, and a willingness to engage in negotiations, qualities that are often scarce in the context of Middle Eastern politics. As we look ahead, the critical question arises: will Israel heed Russia's caution and opt for a diplomatic approach, or will it choose to strike Iran's nuclear facilities, potentially triggering a series of events that could reshape the region forever? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section. What do you think lies ahead for this conflict? If you want to see more videos like this one, consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the bell icon next to it. We plan to delve into topics that are often overlooked, including African politics, economic issues, and the continent's rising influence. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts, so please share your opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to stay informed on important topics like this, make sure to subscribe to TruthScope and hit the bell icon to receive notifications for our latest content. Your engagement helps us grow and bring you more insightful discussions. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.